Jackie Sledge. And I've been a Master Gardener since 2013, so I've been around a while too. So today, this is exciting. I love to talk about water. I love to talk about EarthKind. That is one of my favorite things to talk about. And so, EarthKind is something that Texas A&M and Texas AgriLife are really touting because it's so important that we are good to our environment. And there are ways that we can save it and use what we have and make it better. So everything that we're going to talk about today is going to be environmentally friendly. And that's important that we are environmentally friendly. And that doesn't mean that we're going to have a rock garden in our front yard. That's New Mexico. I know, I lived there for a little while. And it was so hard to get used to. And it's nice to come back and have grass or whatever it is that grows in the yard. So we're going to talk about how to make it environmentally friendly. So what are some of the principles of the EarthKind? And it's really to conserve our resources. It's also to conserve our energy. You know, it's important as I read a book, my favorite book is called Gardening in the Second Half of Life, and it's talking about how we need to reduce and rethink what we do as we're growing and doing our landscaping. So that way that we are tending what we have and not out there toiling and not enjoying it. So that's kind of the principle behind the EarthKind. We're reducing the pesticides and the insecticides, the things that are not particularly good for our environment and also not good at all for our pollinators. We want to keep them coming. And then we want to reduce what goes into the waste. So there are 10 principles on the A&M Aggie Horticulture website about what you can do. Now, if you have just moved to a house and you have a blank slate, it's easy to go ahead and make your yard, your acreage, whatever, EarthKind. If you have existing landscape, it's a little more difficult, but it is very, very doable. So that's what we're going to talk about today, since I imagine most of us have existing landscapes and we're not going to just take everything out and start over. And there is the Aggie Horticulture website, and there is a total link that's nothing but EarthKind. Now, some of the links in there do not work. They are under construction. They are rewriting the EarthKind information, and so hopefully once all of that is finished, it'll get back up and running. But a lot of them do work, and everything I have in my PowerPoint, these are links that you can get. Okay, first of all, and one that's very near and dear to my heart is mulching. You can save a lot of water, a lot of energy by adding mulch to your landscape. They recommend at least a 3-inch mulch in your beds, and that will help hold the moisture in. It will also help hold the temperature not as hot and not as cold. So it's a very, very important part of the EarthKind process. Now, at my house, I have a drip system in my beds, flower beds, and I mulch over it. And that will help the water coming out of my drip system stay on the soil and be absorbed by the plants and make them good. It also helps by reducing weeds. It's not going to be a total weed deterrent, but it's not like my yard is right now, the grassy part. So it helps with the weeds, erosion, and as it breaks down, it's adding to your soil to make it better. So that's an important part of the mulching. What I like about mulch is it makes your bed look finished. It makes it look put together. This is really an attractive one. And then this is another one. The grass is the more wild grass, but then you look at the bed and it's nice and finished and it's not weedy looking. It looks very planned. So I really am touting mulch. When I say mulch, it needs to be organic mulch from organic plants and wood mulch. You can mulch with rocks, you can mulch with the lava. There are a lot of things you can use. They don't break down and some of them will hold heat. And especially in the summer, I don't want a lot of heat added around the plants. So I use wood and it breaks down. You're going to have to replace it every, a couple of years. 2 years ago.
Just on the mulch, getting the finding crushed mulch not too far from here, $7 for the back of your pickup.
Yes, it's a very good price.
Yes, you can't beat it in terms of labor and digging it out yourself.
Exactly, that's the city mulch. They've got the single grind and they've got the double grind, and it's a lot finer. I have to do all the yard work myself, so I generally buy bagged mulch. And that's simply because I can handle it easier than having to shovel it out of the back of the pickup and then wheelbarrowing it some way. I just take bags. Now, I've got a large yard, takes a lot of mulch. 2 years ago, when I did just the front beds and 2 in the back, I used 160 bags of mulch. And so, there would be several pickups full of mulch had I done that.
That's $7 a pickup load.
Yes, but anyway, mulch is just so important. Okay, another one that is important is low volume irrigation. I know we all see that the sprinklers that go all over the streets or the sidewalks. I've yet to see the street grow. Nothing's growing out there. So it's really good when we can do the things that will keep the water where we want it to be. If you use the drip irrigation in your beds, you're going to get about a 90% efficiency with it. Versus if you're using the other types, it could be 50 to 70% efficiency. So this is much more efficient than the other. It helps to prevent the runoff, the evaporation, prevents damage to the leaves because you're watering from the bottom up. The roots are getting the water, and that's where you want the water to go. Also, there are so many different kinds of drip systems. John is going to talk about that in his presentation, so I'm not going to go into that, but you can find them online, find them at the stores here, and there is a wealth of information about how to install them. You can have them in your beds. Even if you have pots, you can do the drip into your pots, and it just saves a lot of time where you're tending your yard and not toiling with it. This is an example of it, and that one seems to be working very efficiently because it's very close to the plants. Another thing is once you have your irrigation, whether it's in your beds or in your yard, it needs to be checked periodically. I have a neighbor, I don't think he likes me. Anyway, he has a great irrigation system. He has a beautiful yard, and he has 2 sprinkler heads that are fountains out in the front yard. And so, I had to knock on the door and tell him his sprinkler system was not working correctly. Well, after the 3rd time, I decided that he didn't care. So, but I check mine, of course, before I start using it at the beginning of the year. But I still check mine about every month when I go out. I will run it and I will look to be sure, because invariably there's a lawnmower that runs over it, or my grandson's baseball team manages to just locate one of them. So it's important to make sure that your sprinkler system is working properly. It's also important to know where the water is going. And I usually use tuna cans or cat food cans and place them all out in the yard. And when I'm doing that and running my system, I can make sure that the water is going everywhere I need it, and that also I'm getting the proper amount, because I want about an inch of water a week on my grass. And I think John's going to talk about that one too. And then you can do that by having a specialist come in if you want to. I do it myself, and then I call somebody if it's something I can't fix. Okay? This is just showing the can. And the cycle and soak. This one is one that's really near and dear to my heart, and I think Joe and John are both going to talk about that. If I run my sprinkler system, or if I'm watering the beds, I do it in cycles, because you should water for about 5 or 10 minutes and then move on to the next one. If you look in your yard or in your flower bed, a lot of times if you run your full cycle, the water is going not on your plants. It has moved. And this way, 5 or 10 minutes will let it soak all the way through, and then you cycle back through, and then it will go through the second time too. You're not going to lose any water, or very little. I have an old system where I cannot program it to cycle 2 cycles. So I'm the manual cycler here. It runs, and then about whenever I think about it after it's run, I will go out and run it again, manually hit it so it will run through the cycle again. If I'm watering plants, I water, hand water, and then I go through, and then I go back and make a second round. And that way they get the benefit of everything I'm putting in.
If you're cycling, how many cycles, let's say you're cycling for like 10 minutes, how many different cycles should you have?
Well, it depends on the output of your system, because some systems, depending on how they are, they don't put out as much water. You know, some of the heads have the water that goes, it's full blast. Others are the little microfine sprays. So it will depend on your system. Mine is one of the older ones, and so I just go 2 cycles, and it will get my inch. That's when you measure it with the tuna can and see what comes out.
Now, in a vegetable garden where you're wanting to water deeper, would you just do like 1 cycle and let it do just the deeper water?
In the vegetable garden, and then John's going to address this, I'm sure, I have a drip system, and I cycle that twice also, but because I don't want to get water on some of the leaves. Okay? And this is just showing, that you can adjust your cycle if you can. Okay, integrated pest management is something that's also important with the EarthKind. We're trying not to use pesticides and insecticides so that we keep our pollinators. So we look at other means of handling them. A lot of times it's picking bugs. A lot of times it is planting something. I'm a big marigold plant fan because they tend to keep bugs away. Are they 100%? No. There's nothing that's 100%. But I do find plants that will be companion plants but will repel insects. There are also trap plants that you can do, and all the bad bugs will go to the trap plant and leave the good ones alone. So sometimes you have to use chemicals, but always use the one that's least toxic for what your need is, and follow the instructions. And they're my marigolds. I love them. And another one, we did an experiment in our greenhouse out here. We had some bugs. And ladybugs are wonderful. They like to eat the little critters. And we bought 100 ladybugs. And one night we went into the greenhouse and released them. Now, of course, they go through windows, they go through doors. indoors, so you don't have 100 the next morning, and some of them don't live. But it's amazing how efficient those little things are. They are good. So if you have ladybugs, don't shoo them away. Composting, that is what really, really improves your soil. Most of us probably have clay soil. You probably have sandy soil because you're close enough to Abilene that you have clay. But if you have the clay soil, it's really important that you amend it with the compost. I also use expanded shale in some of my areas to try and break up the clay. Anyway, we want to amend it as much as we can. Some people don't want to have a big compost bin, and I don't want to have to take it every time we eat, take something out. So I keep a little composter on my cabinet and put things in, and then, every day or two I'll take it out and add it. So there are ways that these don't smell. They have a filter, and you can just take care of it. Add it to your compost pile. There are some sources that will say you can do mini compost pockets where you can dig a little hole and go ahead and bury some of that. I have not tried, I've done it in a few places. It's so new, I don't know if it works or if it doesn't, but I'm always willing to try that instead of waiting for the compost to cook and be ready. This will always add nutrients, and we use it to improve the soil structure, and also it's free. It's keeping the waste out of the landfill. Okay. This is a rather simple compost pile, and then a much more sophisticated one where you're moving them from bin to bin. And there are the tumblers that you can have. Lots of ways you can compost. Okay, fertilizing. It's important to know what your soil is so you know how to fertilize it. And you can get one of the little bags and send in a request to have a soil sample done. And then you know exactly what your soil needs. I know for years I just put out the generic whatever I bought at the box store and thought, I'm so good. And I did a soil test and it came back and said, oh, you're not good. The phosphorus, it said, I was so high, there was in red across it saying, do not use phosphorus for the next 5 years.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so that's been, and I haven't done another test since then. It's been 8 years. I looked at mine. We have them here. You can get one today and take it with you. And you fill the bag and send it to A&M and they'll do your test. So it's great information. We recommend that you do it every 3 years because things change. You may have planted something different that added nitrogen to your soil. You may have fertilized. So you need to know exactly what your soil is. And like I say, we recommend every 3 years. And then that's the information. Now, what I always do, since I just live on almost 3/4 of an acre, I do the home. But there are others, if you have, like acreage, you can do those too, so you'll know what your acreage is and how that needs to be. Okay, they brought some in there on that back table if you're interested in getting one. Okay, and then this, when you look at the fertilizer bag, the first number is the nitrogen, the second one is the phosphorus, and the third one is potassium. My neighbor, it's a sprinkler that goes straight up, he loves nitrogen because he wants a very, very green yard. And it looks wonderful, but I always want to soil test his yard. I might go over in the dead of the night and give one and do his yard for him. He's a sweet man, he really is. I love my neighbor. He just thinks I'm over the top of it a little bit. It wasn't because I loaded 160 bags of mulch in my house. That had nothing to do with it. But anyway, rainwater harvesting, that's another one that is really near and dear to our heart, and Joe's going to talk about that. But, rain barrels, if you don't have, don't want to do a rain barrel, there are always ways you can catch water. You can have a barrel, but not take it off the roof and through your gutters. You can sit it out there. There are funnels where the water will go in. I'm notorious for running out with big buckets and setting it out there and capturing it. I don't want to leave it that long uncovered, or I'm going to be growing mosquitoes. So it's important that we are conscious of what we're doing. But there are ways. If you don't collect rainwater and you want better water to use when you're watering your plants, if you use a watering can, you can set your water out for 24 hours. And the chemicals will go out of the water, and it's much more like rainwater than just out of the hose and faucet.
Assuming that you got some rain.
Well, no, you just put your city water in there and let it sit overnight.
Right.
Oh, yeah, the rain barrel. If you're using it, we've got to have rain for sure. The other day, I certainly helped rain barrels.
Anything just maybe it's ridiculous.
This is one of the simple systems where it comes out, goes into the barrel. When that one's full, it goes down to the next one, and then the next one, and then you can use out of them, and it's a good system. These are like the rain barrels that we make, and you can actually put those together in a system like that. Or you can have fancier ones. That one is very impressive. Yes. I think probably the most impressive one I have seen is the Texas AgriLife Extension Office in Dallas. They remodeled their building, and almost the whole bottom of it is with rain barrels.
Oh, wow.
And then they built a greenhouse on top of their building. I mean, so they have the greenhouse up there, they have all the rainwater collection. Very, very impressive. Okay, preparing planting areas. So if we're going to plant, we need to make sure we have prepared our soil. We need to know what our soil is so we can add what we need. But it's time to make sure we've got the amendments, the nutrients in there, to make sure that you're not going to have diseases, and you have to have the proper amount of water. When you're getting plants, at my house, I usually look for Texas Superstars and Texas Natives, because I feel I have a much better chance of success with my plants when I'm using the ones that are tougher, that survive our Texas environment. So I really try to do that. And I group the plants together that have light water needs. I learned that the hard way one time because I had this vision. And I had my plants, and I planted them, and I was doing a color theme at the time. Part of them needed a lot of water. Some of them never wanted to drop. So if I watered a lot, the ones that didn't like it, they died. If I didn't water, the ones that did want water died. So I learned pretty quickly it is not a good idea just to do a color garden unless you make sure the plants are all the same and they have the same water requirement. Then add compost to it. That encourages them to grow deeper, the roots to grow deeper. And I have gone to a number of raised beds because I can control that soil a lot easier. I can dig in it better than I can my clay. I literally, it will take me days to plant a number one pot in my backyard because I can get about like this, and then I have to water it and let it soften up a little, and then I can go another little bit, and it's a lot. So I am trying to convert a lot of my yard to raised beds. And it just worked well so far. And then this is just showing you need to prepare it, add your nutrients, your compost, whatever. And these are raised beds. These are not mine. Mine are all different levels, but they are I did metal with mine. And turf maintenance. one of the things with EarthKind is we don't necessarily want the big expanse of beautiful green grass like, I remember that growing up. You had to have grass everywhere in a little flower beds. Flowers and vegetables, and they couldn't touch. And now we mix everything together. EarthKind recommends that you have a third in turf, a third in landscape beds, and a third in hardscape. So these could be sidewalks, pathways, driveways, whatever. But that way you're not spending as much time and energy on lawn. Lawn is that's the number one water use because we're trying to keep it going. So that's why we need to start converting. Leave the clippings on the lawn. I do that. I also leave my leaves on the lawn for my trees and mow them. And in that way, they go into the soil and help improve it. Okay? I want one of these.
No, you don't.
No, you don't? I mean, I like the way the lawn looks when you mow it does. This isn't really my ideal, but anyway, it takes a lot of energy to do that. So, there are some additional EarthKind publications, and they are listed on the Aggie Horticulture website under EarthKind. And then when you get to publications, there's some on water conservation resources, and those are really important. It talks about wind water conservation, low volume irrigation, irrigation systems auditing, and mulch. And rainwater harvesting and raised beds. All of that goes into water and water usage. So those links all work. I checked them last night again. And then there's another section on landscaping for energy conservation, and they have a part 1 and a part 2. Also landscape design, plant selection, and soil improvement. So those are all active, and they all have really good information in them. There's another one on reduction of fertilizer and pesticide use. Their beneficials in the garden, fertilization, IPM, pesticides, native habitat, and natural nutrients. And then the last one they have is the reduction of yard waste entering landfills. And these are fall practices. You know, in the fall, a lot of times we've gotten pretty tired of being outside in the heat, and things are starting to die down. It's not as pretty. We don't want to be out there, but there are a lot of things we need to do in the fall that will improve everything for the next year. Composting leaves, composting. Another great source, and they actually have the link on the A&M AgriLife website under EarthKind, to Texas Smartscapes. And this is research that has been done by the Dallas Waste Management. And they are big into water conservation. You know, they're saying the Metroplex is running out of water. I mean, it just grows, and they don't have the kind of water that they need up there. So Texas Smartscape has wonderful information. And they have combined, they go along with A&M, but they've combined, instead of 10 steps to make your yard EarthKind, they have 7. They have the plan and design, which is, you know, figuring out how you want, reducing the size of the turf. They have the soil and planting and mulch. Water-wise, that's where they put all of the water in one place. The irrigation, the rainwater harvesting, and then the usage of it, how to water. So they combine 3, and that's why they have 7. And then the maintenance of it. You know, once we get things in place, we need to maintain it. It's not going to maintain itself. And so it's important that we do keep it up. The resources that I use, for this would be the Texas AgriLife Extension and Texas Smartscape, and of course Aggie Horticulture. I live on Aggie Horticulture. There's a direct link to that one. So, we're here to help you. Do you have questions, problems?
Sorry, can you go back to the 1, 2, 3, 4? I wasn't fast enough.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Now, what's the name of the book that you like about gardening in your second half?
Gardening in the Second Half of Life.
Okay.
It's a small book, but it is really quite interesting. It uses a lot of the principles that we do as master gardeners. But it really talks about being realistic. You know, I can't do the things I used to do. My neighbor friend had sat out in his lawn chair and he said, "You're never going to get all that mulch done." Well, don't dare me on that one. I got all the mulch done. But, you know, that was not a smart thing to do. I need to do things more in steps. But I want it all finished at once. Okay, did you finish it?
Thank you.
And then okay. So we, of course, have our website. We have a lot of information on there. We have our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, email, call the extension office. I know we get lots of calls. They answer some of them. They send them to us to answer. And we're always happy to talk to people. We all have questions. Yes.
One thing I will mention, on our YouTube channel, most of the principles that she was talking about today, compost, design, landscape design, irrigation, all that sort of stuff, we do have videos, usually 1 hour or longer videos on each of those subjects. So we have a lot of really good information on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and it's really important to look at all of this together. I know we're talking mainly about water today, but if we don't have our soil right, then the water isn't going to be as effective. Or if we haven't designed our yard right, you know, everything kind of goes together. So this was kind of just the introduction, and today we're going to talk about water because it is so important. Okay, any other questions? All right, we're going to take a break, about a 15-minute break, and we'll get started again.